This isn't here to get clicks. It's here so you can learn from our characters' mistakes and avoid making the same ones.
He didn't yell, didn't accuse, didn't even text back, just silence. When I got home the next day, after what was supposed to be an easy lie, one night, one excuse, I opened the front door expecting the usual stillness. Instead, the smell of butter and eggs hung in the air, warm, familiar, and there she was, my mother, at our stove, in my t-shirt, scrambling eggs like she owned the place. I froze. My heart hit my ribs hard. Keys slipped from my hand and clattered onto the tile. She didn't even flinch, just cracked pepper like she'd done it 100 times before. Then his voice from behind the kitchen island, calm, steady, almost amused. "Hey, Mrs. Landry, your daughter's back from her little date." He didn't look at me when he said it, just took a sip of his coffee like nothing mattered. And maybe by then, it didn't. If you're still listening, and any of this feels uncomfortably familiar, hit like and subscribe. Most people just listen in silence, but that one click tells the team these stories matter. My mother finally turned around. Her face was pale, not angry, just worn. I saw the judgment in her eyes before she spoke. "You told me you were working late," she said, voice low. I didn't answer. My throat had closed up. I hadn't prepared for this version of events. I had rehearsed for blame, for shouting, for slammed doors. Not this, not breakfast, not a man who made one phone call and upended the entire performance. He still hadn't moved, just leaned back in the chair, gaze fixed on the window behind me. "I asked her if you were there," he said to my mother. "She said she hadn't seen you in days." There was no venom in his voice, no heat. That made it worse. I could have handled rage. I had braced for it. But this casual unraveling, it was like drowning in cold water. My mother picked up the spatula, then set it back down. "I'm going to go," she said softly. "You two should talk." But he stood first. "No need." Then finally his eyes landed on me. They were unreadable, just done. I already had the conversation I needed. He walked past me like I wasn't even there, the front door clicking shut behind him. I looked at the table. 2 plates, one empty, mine, waiting. But no one asked if I was hungry. I barely slept that night. I kept thinking he'd call, or text, something. Instead, nothing. No missed calls, no new messages. Just that crushing, expanding silence, like the air was thicker now. By morning, I was in my car before I even knew where I was going. I didn't have a plan, just a sick feeling in my stomach and a need to not be home. I pulled into my mom's driveway around 9 a.m. Her house was quiet, too quiet. No coffee brewing, no radio humming from the kitchen, no curtains drawn open like she always did first thing. I knocked, then knocked again. My heart pounded like maybe he'd be inside somehow, waiting with that look I couldn't shake from the night before, but she opened the door, still in her robe, confused. "Hey," I said, forcing a smile. "Mind if I crash for a bit?" Her brow furrowed. I thought you were home." I blinked. "Why would you think that?" She stepped back, letting me in. Because he was here. That stopped me. I stepped inside slowly, heart now doing something between panic and disbelief. The scent of last night's breakfast still hung faintly in the air. Eggs and toast, maybe something buttery. Her kitchen table had 2 mugs on it, both rinsed but not put away. I couldn't stop staring. What do you mean he was here?" I asked finally. "He came by early," she said, and bag in hand. "Said he was staying over. Said you told him you were here. I told him you weren't." I sat down hard. "And then?" "He made coffee. Asked if I had rye bread." My mother's voice was tight now. Not angry, disappointed. That was worse. "He stayed?" I asked. She nodded. Didn't raise his voice, didn't say anything cruel, just said he was done pretending not to see it. I felt like I was watching my own life from the outside, like someone else had stepped in and taken the lead role. He said he wasn't here for explanations, just clarity. I swallowed. "And you gave it to him?" Her silence was the answer. Then she turned toward the sink. "He made breakfast, washed the dishes, said thank you." I pressed my hands to my face. My mother didn't comfort me. She didn't ask what I'd done because she already knew. Maybe she'd known for weeks, months. I'll be in the guest room, I muttered. She didn't stop me, didn't even look my way. But as I climbed the stairs, I noticed something folded neatly on the arm of the couch. A dark gray hoodie of his, still warm, still smelling faintly of cedar and aftershave. He hadn't run, he'd simply moved, shifted the pieces without warning. And now I was the one chasing silence. I came down late the next morning. The air in the kitchen was still, but the smell of coffee was fresh. My mom had already made a pot, dark roast, the kind he liked. 2 mugs sat on the table. Only one had steam curling from the rim. She was sitting there quietly, in the same chair he'd probably used the morning before, turning her wedding ring slowly on her finger. She looked up when I entered but didn't smile. "I made toast," she said. "Help yourself." I did, but my hands shook just enough to make it awkward. I sat down across from her, chewing more than tasting, every part of me waiting for a lecture or a soft scolding, some maternal flick of disappointment wrapped in pity. But she said nothing for a long time. Then, "He told me you said you were here." I stopped chewing. I nodded once. She stirred her coffee. "Were you even going to tell me where you were?" "I didn't want to drag you into it," I said, eyes down. She gave a small, tired laugh. "You dragged me into it the moment you used my name as a cover." I felt the burn of shame rising behind my collarbone. I just needed space. "From him?" I didn't answer. She let the silence stretch between us like a rubber band pulling tighter and tighter. Then she said, "He's been steady, you know. Always. Even when you weren't." I looked up sharply. "He's not perfect," she added. "Not kindly, not cruelly, just stating it plain. But he never tried to win people over. He just showed up, even yesterday, when he shouldn't have had to." "I didn't plan this," I muttered. "I didn't wake up thinking." She held up a hand. "I'm not asking for your story." I blinked. "I just think," she continued, "you ought to know that sometimes people leave not because they're angry, but because they finally believe you meant it." My stomach twisted. She leaned back in the chair, let out a slow breath, then stood. "I never liked him at first," she said. That made me look up. Too quiet, too controlled, but I learned to respect it because it wasn't a game to him. She paused by the pantry, opened it, rummaged for something. I expected her to grab bread or sugar, but instead she pulled out an old photo album, the tan leather one from before I was married. She brought it to the table and opened it to a page I hadn't seen in years. There he was, standing beside me at my cousin's wedding, arm around my waist, sun in his eyes, my smile wide, his faint. She tapped the corner of the photo. See that man there?" she asked. "That's the version you started pulling away from the second another name came back into your life." I went still. She didn't need to say it again, but she did. "Derek." The name hit harder than I expected, like something thrown from far away but landing right between my ribs. I whispered, "You knew?" She nodded, "And he does now too." The coffee had gone cold, the toast untouched, but I had never felt heat like this. I told myself he was licking his wounds somewhere, maybe at a friend's, maybe still home, too stunned to move. I didn't expect him to be having tea with my mother. She didn't tell me, not directly, but I could hear it in the way she answered my texts with tight one-word replies, shorter than usual, cooler. I tried to act normal, sent a few photos from the resort, captioned them with inside jokes, one shot of my legs by the pool, another of the wine bar, our charcuterie board half-touched, all smiles, all lies. But the comments started to roll in under one photo, not the one I posted, but one I was tagged in. Kayla had snapped a group shot, 5 of us on that velvet bench, cocktails in hand, looking carefree. The caption read, "Girls' Weekend, just us." I should have checked it more closely. I should have noticed the mirror. In the corner of the frame, a reflection, a man's silhouette, just his torso and arm, but the details gave it away. White shirt, watch, the way his hand curved over my knee, it was unmistakable, and it wasn't an accident. He didn't message me, didn't call, but I knew he'd seen it. because the next morning the tags were gone. I tried to re-tag him in something stupid, some reel about husbands being dramatic. It didn't work. He'd already unfollowed me, unlinked his accounts, disconnected with such precision it scared me. I called. It rang, went to voicemail. I didn't leave one. Instead, I paced the length of the hotel room like it was a cage. I stared at the phone, wondering what he was doing, wondering if he was crying, broken, still waiting. He wasn't. He was sitting on my mother's back porch. She texted me that night out of nowhere, just 2 words, "He knows." No punctuation, no warmth, not even an ounce of protection. I stared at it until my screen dimmed. The others came back from the spa, laughing, tipsy from champagne, oblivious. But I was cold. Cold because I didn't know what scared me more. That he hadn't confronted me, or that he wouldn't. He never asked where the money went. That used to terrify me. How much he trusted me. Or maybe it wasn't trust. Maybe it was something colder, quieter. The way a man watches the ocean pull back before a wave. He never questioned the weekends away, the work dinners, the Lyft charges. I told myself that meant I was still safe, still one step ahead, but the day I saw he disconnected his location from our family sharing app, I felt something shift. I opened the expense tracker we used just to check if he'd logged anything. He usually tagged groceries, car maintenance, small things like light bulbs or furnace filters. This time, there were no new entries under his name, but the joint account showed a recent sync. Yesterday. I clicked in and my chest tightened. Hotel receipts, 2 nights, not near my supposed work site, not even in the same city. Rideshare trips to and from the same luxury resort I had just left. The same one where Kayla had tagged me by accident. Dinner bills, filet, wine, 2 entrees, room charges, all listed under a card I didn't recognize. Not our shared visa, not my personal one either. A business travel card issued under a holding company name I'd never seen before. I felt the blood drain from my face. He wasn't just aware, he was documenting it. I scrambled to pull up the email tied to the reservation confirmation. The inbox was empty, but when I checked my spam folder, I found it. An auto-forwarded message from my personal account, timestamped, flagged, quietly rerouted. He had rerouted my filters weeks ago. The emails had been coming in all along. He'd seen every forgot password reset, every travel itinerary, every comped dessert, thank you from the concierge. I suddenly realized he never needed to confront me. He was building something, not a fight, not a scandal, a record, a structure, something built in silence and sealed with facts. And I'd walked straight into it, heels clicking, lips smiling, purse full of receipts. He had known long before, I confessed. He just hadn't told me that the scoreboard had already changed. I hadn't been home in days. I kept extending the trip, reshuffling the story. First, it was mom needing help, then a migraine, then traffic. I figured by the time I returned, he'd either be gone or ready to explode. Either option would give me something to control. Instead, the house was quiet when I pulled into the driveway, still as a held breath. His truck was parked out front. My fingers trembled slightly as I turned the key. I pushed the door open, bracing for the weight of his silence, or worse, the crash of whatever was left between us. What I didn't expect was the smell of eggs and laughter from the kitchen, the kind of soft, familiar laughter that made the house feel like someone else lived there now. I stepped inside slowly, set my purse down by the console. The key slipped from my hand and landed with a thud, but no one looked up. Then I turned the corner. My mother was standing at the stove, cracking pepper into a pan, wearing one of his flannel shirts, too big on her, sleeves rolled to the elbow. The pan sizzled, toast popped from the toaster, and he was there too, sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, legs casually crossed like a man in his own rhythm. He glanced up only when I froze in the doorway. "Hey, sweetheart," he said. Calm, measured. "Nice of you to drop in." My mouth opened. Nothing came out. My mother didn't say anything either. She just flipped the eggs with practiced ease, like this wasn't surreal, like this was how things had always been. "Mom," I croaked. She glanced over her shoulder, but her face didn't soften. "Morning." What are you doing here?" She didn't answer right away, just plated the eggs and brought them to the table, sat down across from him like it was any other Sunday. "I stayed the night," she said finally. He invited me. I blinked. You stayed here? She nodded, reaching for the jam. I didn't think you'd mind, since you've been elsewhere. Her words were a scalpel. He didn't look at me again, just raised his mug to his lips and took a slow sip. It was like walking into a room where I'd already been replaced, not by another woman, but by peace, by order, by quiet, chosen company. And for the first time, I felt like the intruder in my own life. I can explain, I blurted, before I even knew what I was saying. My voice sounded too loud in the room, bouncing off walls that no longer belonged to me. It wasn't a defense. It was panic, dressed in borrowed certainty. Neither of them flinched. My mother didn't turn her head. She just folded her napkin slow and deliberate and placed it on the table beside her half-finished eggs. The scrape of porcelain against wood was louder than my breathing. You lied to both of us, she said quietly. Not angrily, not with tears, just done. I tried to speak, but the words caught. The air in the room felt sharp, like I was breathing in glass. She looked up now, eyes direct. And you used my name. That hit harder than anything, not the silence, not the absence, that sentence. She didn't look at me like a daughter. She looked at me like someone she didn't know. I didn't think I started, but he cut in, still seated, still calm. The guy in the wine bar, he said, stirring his coffee with the back of his spoon. Tell him he left his cufflink in your purse. My body went cold, because I had forgotten. That stupid little silver piece. I didn't even realize it had fallen off. I had tucked my purse under the bar stool, leaned in too close, laughed too freely. I didn't know how he knew. The photo, the mirror, the timing, none of it mattered. He didn't ask where I'd been, didn't demand who the man was. He just told me what he already knew, like a surgeon describing the incision before he made it. I reached for the back of a chair to steady myself, but even that small movement felt like too much. My fingers curled around the wood like I was trying to hold on to something solid in a life that was quietly falling out from under me. My mother stood up, walked past me without a glance, and set her plate in the sink. He didn't follow her with his eyes. He didn't have to. He knew the room had shifted, and now I was the only one still pretending the floor hadn't vanished beneath my feet. It started with one buzz, then 3, then 12. I was still in the driveway, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to calm my breathing, when the family group chat lit up like a siren, notifications stacking so fast I couldn't keep up. Aunt Lorraine, wait, what is this? Cousin Daniel, seriously, is this real? Then a photo I didn't post, cropped from Kayla's story, same velvet booth, same smudged glass of red wine, same mirrored reflection, and below it, a screenshot of my text from that Friday night, helping Mom back tomorrow. No caption, just the timestamp. I stared at it, mouth dry. He hadn't spoken to me, hadn't even looked my way since I walked into that kitchen, but now he was speaking loud enough for a dozen people to hear. Uncle Ray chimed in. Who sent this? Silence followed, then a message from my godfather, who rarely weighed in. I'm disappointed, not in the lie, in how lazy it was. I felt heat crawl up my neck. I exited the thread, but the notifications kept coming, blurred previews flashing on my lock screen like blinking warnings. I left the group. Seconds later, I regretted it. But not enough to rejoin. I called him, once, twice. On the third ring, I knew he was holding the phone. I could feel it, his stillness, on the other side of the line, the quiet breath, the awareness. But he didn't answer, didn't decline it either. He just let it ring until it cut out on its own, and somehow that was worse than yelling, worse than him showing up at my door or trashing my name, because I realized I'd built a bonfire to warm my own pride, and he hadn't even stepped close enough to feel the heat. The world around me buzzed and boiled. Screenshots were being passed, sides were being chosen. Everyone was talking, everyone except him, and that silence, it was louder than anything I'd ever heard. He was leaving the store just as I pulled in. Same calm stride, same navy jacket I'd folded 100 times. He didn't notice me at first, or maybe he did and just didn't care. The sun hit the windshield of his truck, reflecting hard into my eyes, but I stayed there, frozen in the moment, heart beating in places it hadn't in weeks. I hadn't meant to follow him, Not really. I told myself I was just running errands. But I'd checked his location history the old way, through receipts, check-ins, routines I knew by heart. Part of me wanted to catch him off guard. Part of me just wanted to see if he still looked at me the same. He didn't. He spotted me near the cart return and stopped, one hand resting on the handle. Nothing defensive, just still. I messed up, I said, breath sharp, but you embarrassed me. His eyes didn't narrow, didn't flicker, just stayed on me like I was background noise he didn't need to tune into anymore. No, he said, you embarrassed yourself. I just gave silence a seat at the table. It hit like a slap I'd earned. I folded my arms across my chest as if that could hold everything in. You're acting like this is nothing, I whispered. He shifted his weight, leaned slightly against the cart, one foot turned outward like he was already walking away. It is, he said, now. My throat burned. You're really gonna just be fine? He tilted his head like the question bored him. I'm not performing anymore, he said. You wanted space, you made it loud and clear. I just stopped filling it. People passed by, pushing carts, loading groceries, laughing into phones, but we stood in that crack of pavement like we'd been cut out of time. I didn't think it would get this far, I said. He nodded once. That was your mistake, assuming I'd always wait at the bottom of the ladder you kept pulling up. There was nothing I could say to that. He pushed the cart toward the corral. The sound of wheels grinding against asphalt echoed louder than my heartbeat. I stood there, in the sunlight, watching the man I thought I knew choose peace over battle, and leave me with the fight I started, but couldn't finish. The door opened with the same key I'd always used, but this time it felt heavier in my hand. The house was quiet, that unnerving, too clean silence, like it had been waiting for me to realize something I should have known long before. I had texted earlier, letting him know I'd swing by to pick up the rest of my things. He didn't respond. I half expected a locked door, or maybe a cold confrontation. I didn't expect nothing. The kitchen lights were off, the blinds drawn halfway, but the counter by the window, our usual drop spot for mail and notes, held something new, a manila envelope, a single silver key, and one sheet of white paper folded in half. I reached for it slowly, like touching it too fast might burn. When I opened the paper, I saw the handwriting first, his, clean and exact. Your mom makes better eggs and better choices. No sign-off, no name, just that. And underneath the note, held in place by a ceramic coaster, was a printed screenshot. My text, helping my mom back tomorrow. The sentence was underlined in red, not highlighted, not circled, just one quiet line that cut straight through the lie and laid it bare. I stood there, fingers trembling slightly, as I remembered how easy it had been to send that message, how casual I'd been, the way I'd tapped send without even thinking. Now it stared back at me like a headline I couldn't rewrite. I walked through the house slowly, touching the edge of the couch, the arm of the chair, the banister I used to lean on when waiting for coffee. It all felt staged now, like I had stepped into a museum of a life I'd already been erased from. There were no packed boxes. He'd left that to me. No traces of his things scattered carelessly like before. Just space, order, stillness. And one final note I couldn't argue with. I placed the key next to the folded paper, because what else could I leave when everything else had already been taken by the silence I made?